Welcome to Children and Anxiety. I'm Kara McNeil, and I'm the Director of Evaluation and Learning at the Halifax Region MFRC. I've been supporting military families at the Resource Center for over 17 years. I'm passionate about supporting families by providing information and resources related to deployment, mental health, and parenting. I'm excited to be delivering this workshop virtually to military families. Today, I'm going to be providing you with information based on some of the best practices and up-to-date research in the area of anxiety. After the workshop, send me an email if you would like to receive a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, handouts, and links to any resources I've referenced. You can find my phone number and email at the bottom of the slide. Before we start any of our parenting workshops at the HNR MFRC, we'd like to let participants know that we believe there's no such thing as the perfect parent. There are no quick fixes, easy answer, or recipes for parenting, if only. Parents are the true experts on their children, and there's no one-size-fits-all approach to raising children. The information and tools we offer are designed to support parents in developing their own ways of promoting their children's growth and development. I invite you to question and explore the information I provide and choose the tools that make sense to you. This workshop is psychoeducational, focusing on prevention and personal growth, not counseling or treatment. If that is something you want to explore, I will give you information later on how you can access this support. Before we dive into anxiety, let's take a few moments to recognize some of our parenting caregiving efforts. Social media is filled with humorous and not so humorous epic parent fails. We often don't have to search far for one of our own parenting insecurities or flaws. In fact, as humans, we seem to have a negativity bias, which means that negative events and circumstances weigh more heavily on us, psychologically speaking, than do positive ones. So it's important for us to make the extra effort to also focus on what we are doing that is positive, as well as find the humor in our experiences. As parents, we do many, many things to support our children and help them grow every day. Take a minute to give yourself some credit for some of these. Select one of the parenting wins on the board. In parenting, it is all the things we do that make a difference, and it's important to recognize the amount of effort and caring we put into our children. So this week, did you tackle that amount of laundry that was in your child's room? Did you feed your family pet? Did you tuck your child in? Were you able to go to one of their practices? Did you taxi them back and forth? What was your hashtag parenting win for the week? Here's our roadmap for today's session. We're going to look at what is anxiety, how children might experience anxiety, and how you might recognize it. We're going to look at what happens in the brain when children experience anxiety and why it can be helpful for children to understand more about what is happening when they experience anxiety. We'll take a look at our role as parents and what parents can do to help their children. Today's session is meant to be an introduction, and I will provide you with ideas of where you can find more information and support after the session. There are so many great resources that are available to you and your family. Today's session is about children, and in particular those 5 to 12 years of age. On the screen, you'll see the great quote by Vanessa LaPointe. She says, "Children are not immature adults. They are children. They have all sorts of stretching and growing to do. There will be stops and starts. There will be mountains and valleys." As parents, we want to make sure our children are able to grow up into smart, caring, independent adults, but this most definitely takes time and does not happen overnight. Children are not capable of self-control, impulse management, and self-regulation all at once. It is not they're trying to mess with their heads. They literally cannot control themselves at times, especially when emotions are running high. We know this from the world of neuroscience. You need a developed frontal and prefrontal cortex and a regulated emotional core in the brain in order to self-regulate. Kids simply don't have this yet. So as they experience life, we as adults can help support their growth so they can eventually become someone who is emotionally settled and has the capacity for self-regulation. They aren't going to get it right away. It's going to take some time. It's to be expected, and it's okay. What exactly is anxiety? Take a few moments to think about it. Why did you tune in today to today's session? Now we're going to take a look at Anxiety BC's definition of anxiety. This is one of the great resources we'll be sharing at the end of the session. Anxiety is normal. Everyone experiences anxiety from time to time. It alerts us to threats, protects us from danger, and helps us to reach important goals. For example, it's normal to feel anxious when trying something new, if you encountered a bear on a hike, or before taking an important exam. Anxiety is not dangerous. Although anxiety feels uncomfortable, it is temporary and will eventually decrease. The sensations we experience in an anxious situation are designed to alert and activate us. They are normal and part of our body's natural response mechanism. Our body is smart enough to know when to amp up and when to calm down. Anxiety is adaptive. Anxiety helps us prepare for real danger, such as crossing a busy street. It can also help us perform at our best and motivate us to study for an exam or practice for a big game. When we experience anxiety, it triggers our fight, flight, freeze response and prepares our body to react. For instance, our heart beats faster to pump blood to our muscles, so we have the energy to run away or fight off danger. Without it, we could not survive. We need some anxiety. Anxiety is part of life. Trying to eliminate anxiety from your child's life is almost impossible, and if it were possible, not sure that it would be a life worth living. Since anxiety is everywhere, one of the greatest gifts you can give your anxious child or teen is the confidence and skill to tolerate anxiety whenever it occurs, and to continue living life anyway. Anxiety can become a problem. Small doses of anxiety in certain situations are useful. However, when your child is worrying much of the time, avoiding fun activities, or refusing to go to school because they're scared or worried, anxiety has definitely become a problem. Think of anxiety like a fog in the picture on the screen. If it covers everything, makes it hard to see, stops you from doing what you usually do, and generally gets in the way, then it has likely become a problem. So how do you recognize anxiety in your child? On the whiteboard, you can see a variety of clues from Kids Have Stress Too that a child may be experiencing stress and perhaps anxiety. It's important to note that some of the signs might not be noticeable as well as depicted in the second visual by Go Zen. So as you can see, 8 ways a child's anxiety shows up is something else. It might look like danger. It might look like anger. So the perception of danger, stress, or opposition is enough to trigger the fight or flight response, leaving your child angry and without a way to communicate. Difficult sleeping is often another one. Defiance, unable to communicate what is really going on, it's easy to interpret the child's defiance as a lack of discipline, instead of an attempt to control a situation where they feel anxious and helpless. Chandeliering is when a seemingly calm person suddenly flies off the handle for no reason. They have pushed hurt and anxiety so deep for so long that a seemingly innocent comment or an event suddenly sends them straight through the chandelier. Lack of focus, avoidance, negativity, and over-planning are some of those signs as well. We'll go back and take a look at Kids Have Stress Too. So our body often experiences different sensations during anxiety. Our mind can become a whirling mind, easily distracted, irrational. Our behaviors might look like hair twisting or clinging to a parent, crying, impulsive, and our feelings get more intense, or we become withdrawn, panicky, irritable are some of those examples. So how do you recognize signs of stress or anxiety in your child? There are a variety of signs of anxiety, and it can be useful to take time to watch our children and help them to identify the signs in themselves. They do not have the same experiences as us and may not be tuned into what happens when they are stressed and anxious. I've only just started to become more familiar with the work of Stewart Shanker in self-regulation. I would recommend his book and website. The lens he looks at our world and stress is extremely powerful. This visual depicts a few of his concepts and challenges these stress detectives to better identify what stresses our children in the 5 domains, whether that be biological, our basic needs being met. Sleep is a part of that. Emotional, feelings, beliefs, transitions, the social area, how we interpret social cues, our friends, those types of things. Pro-social, well, how do we feel about ourselves? How do we interpret cues from others? And cognitive, our receptive processing, developmental stage. Example of cognitive would be math, which is on lots of our stress list for some children. He also has a 5-step method to learn how to be a stress detective. Self-reg is about hitting the pause button, asking, why am I seeing this behavior and why am I seeing it now? Here is another visual by Go Zen that is a little more basic. So again, the same iceberg. What are the behaviors that we're seeing, but then what underlies that? these visuals can also be helpful to show children. Not only do we want to become stress detectives, we want to teach children to become experts in how stress and anxiety work so that they can make changes in how they deal with worry. One way that we can support them is learning more about anxiety and what is happening in their own bodies and brains. Anxiety is normal and often plays a useful role, as we discussed earlier. Children need to hear that being afraid is okay and even right. We humans are supposed to worry. It helps us to stop and think about our actions, to back away from dangers, or to fight for our lives if necessary. But many situations we face are not life-threatening, and we want to learn more about managing those feelings. Anxiety is not a sign of breakage. It's a sign that a strong, healthy, magnificent brain is doing exactly what brains are meant to do, which is protect us from threat. Children often believe the physical symptoms are the problem. It's important to remember that physical sensations, even when caused by anxiety, are physical. Symptoms are the end result of a predictable pattern, and if we change the pattern, we can influence the symptoms. Children and parents benefit greatly from understanding what the physical symptoms are all about. So knowing how the alarm system fires off takes away the mystery. It helps to tell children that everyone has a worry center in the brain and helps to understand how to respond when our children need our help. Many of you have heard of the fight, flight, or freeze response. Now, how in the heck are we going to explain that to children? Thankfully, there are some great ideas on how to do this. Stewart Shanker has a way to introduce this to children, as does Daniel Siegel and Tina Payne-Bryson of the Yes Brain and Karen Young from Hay Sigmund. Another potential visual that can help you explain the brain to children is shown on the whiteboard. Chris Bergstrom from Blissful Kids created characters to help children understand the brain and what is happening to them. The prefrontal cortex, or TEX for short, is a newer part of the brain that helps us deal with emotions and make wise decisions. She figures out stuff for you and helps you make choices. She's there to stop you from doing crazy things for your own good. TEX is like the smart sheriff in your brain. TEX helps us to deal with thoughts, emotions, and our actions in relation to our goals. She helps us plan and make good decisions, and she helps us with impulse control too, to overcome temptation. When we experience a thought or an emotion, TEX asks, will this help us to reach our goals? If the answer is no, then TEX will stop you from acting, from doing the crazy stuff. If the answer is yes, as in this will help you reach your goal, then TEX will allow you to act. This is how the prefrontal cortex, or TEX, does her work, sort of like a sheriff in your brain. The amygdala, Amy, is like the jumpy superhero who tries to protect you at all costs, but often mistakes stress for real threats, and effectively stops TEX from doing her job. Now, why do we have something like this going on in our fancy brains? What is this? It's called the fight, flight, freeze response. During a stress response, we disconnect from rational thinking. We shift gears to an impulsive, reactive fight, flight, freeze mode. We lose connection to higher brain functions like self-regulation, empathy, communication skills, and memory. We have a hard time focusing, remembering instructions, controlling impulses, and making good choices. This is how evolution has wired our brains. Our brains have evolved to react to danger and overwhelm this way. Long ago, wild animals hunted us. Our brains helped us to survive by reacting automatically to danger. This ancient part of our brains, the amygdala, still sounds the alarm whenever it believes we are in imminent danger, and when the alarm goes off, our bodies prepare to fight, flight, and freeze. The alarm goes off when we face overwhelming or strong emotions like fear, anger, and sadness. The amygdala does not see a difference between perceived threats and actual threats. It often triggers false alarms, just like the smoke alarm goes off when the toaster is burning toast. Using an animal analogy can also help children understand some of this as well. What happens when your cat feels threatened? What happens when there's a loud noise? What does your dog do? What does their body look like? It's really hard to make good choices or speak eloquently when your body forces you to fight, flight, or freeze, right? According to the studies, we can practice mindfulness to activate both TEX and hippo, the prefrontal cortex in the hippocampus. Sustained practice can even help them grow bigger. This way, TEX and hippo can help you control your attention, manage and respond to emotions and thoughts, and control impulses, so that you can better deal with difficult emotions and thoughts and ultimately make better decisions. For parents, it is important to remember stress response hinders access to memory recall and storage. It's really hard to think clearly. use logic, or even remember to complete basic tasks when the alarm system has sounded. Unchecked worried thoughts and how we imagine events going wrong both set off the alarm system. Also, if you're afraid of the thoughts and sensations of the alarm system itself, you set off the alarm system again, intensifying the response. So the goal is to recognize when our jumpy superhero Amy is taking over and allow the text, the smart one, the prefrontal cortex, to help us understand better which events are really threatening versus events you can manage. It takes practice and repetition for the brain, but it can learn. Mindfulness and other calming techniques can help activate the smart one. Can you see yourself using a visual like this to explain anxiety in the brain to your child? Have you ever asked yourself why some children are more anxious than others? What the current research tells us is that there's no anxiety gene, but temperament makes a difference. A genetic predisposition to be sensitive, emotional, fearful, or high-strung. Children who worry more tend to be more sensitive, have active imaginations, high standards, and cling to perfectionism. But this does not mean it is a destiny, and being a worrier can be temporary and is definitely changeable. There is a good chance at least one parent is anxious. Heredity plays a part, but anxiety is also learned and may be a long family tradition. Regardless, when parents understand their role in perpetuating an anxious response to life, you can embrace new strategies to alter the pattern. Life events in the family, other people's actions, and the world we live in can also influence anxiety. I think it's worth each of us considering just how much we are influenced by the constant bombardment of fear in our everyday life, despite the fact that the world is not more dangerous. The media and society as a whole keep coming up with new ways to frighten us parents. Watch the news? They make us believe there's a predator behind every tree, and so we keep our kids closer than ever, meaning they rarely have the kind of free, unstructured, unsupervised time that serves as a pressure valve. Let Them Grow is an organization that challenges us to have our kids do one thing on their own that you did at their age that you haven't allowed them to do till now. Maybe let them ride their bikes to a friend's house, or play outside in the neighborhood, or get themselves to school. Age-appropriate, of course. Can you think of some of these freedoms you may have had as a child that your child now does not have? What practitioners who work with children in anxiety, like Reed Wilson and Lynn Lyons, tell us, it's not about blaming anyone or yourself. It's about developing a better understanding of the strategies to manage anxiety. We want to teach children to become experts on how anxiety works so that they can make changes in how they deal with anxiety.